Hello, I'm calling this video I Read the Qur'an because I did it. I read the Qur'an. And yeah, some students knew that I had a copy of it, or actually some copies of the Qur'an because of some generous students. And I finished it and I feel pretty good about it, honestly. So, I just thought I should probably talk about it in some way. But I feel like it's not really a topic that I can adequately talk about in just a quick conversation at school. So I wanted to make this video so I could talk about it in a controlled environment, edited, revised, refined. It's going to be pretty boring probably, just a lot of me talking about me, which is one of my favorite topics, but maybe not everybody's. I'm going to try my best not to make this video too political. I'm not going to be making any interpretations or telling you how you should feel about it. I just want to kind of break this down in like the most ELA teacher way ever. We're going to use the before, during, and after reading strategy. Insert fancy graphic here. We might as well practice hitting some ELA outcomes while we're at it. So sit back, relax, check out this time-lapse video footage I've been gathering recently. You really learn how dirty your windows are when you try to photograph the sun through them. That's pretty poetic. Maybe that's a metaphor or an allegory for life or something. But yeah, we'll do before, like why did I start reading the Quran? During, how did I read it? And after, what am I thinking since reading it? So here we go. Let's start with our before reading strategy. So why did I start reading Quran? So this goes back like maybe a year ago, probably. I had been wanting to read it for a while, actually. It was one of my goals for a lot of reasons. Number one, I think it's an important thing, in history, in spiritual circles. It's a very foundational text for lots of people on Earth, and so that makes it just super important. Two, it's important to my students, I think. Maybe more important to some students than others, I'm not sure, but obviously, teaching at an Islamic school, the Quran is a central text in a lot of my students' lives. And I've been realizing that I know very little about Islam or what it means to be a Muslim. So I thought, reading Quran could only help me understand my students and hopefully the world better. And that seems like a noble pursuit. So this was about a year ago that I started taking the idea somewhat seriously, but I wouldn't actually start reading it for maybe another 6 months or so. I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, about a year ago, I started renting some copies of the Quran from the library. One of the versions I liked the most was this one called the Study Quran, which was this big, like super scholarly version with all these liner notes and interpretation notes and historical info. And it was huge, and it was just a bit too big and not really like sustainable for where I was at in my reading routine. But, I dabbled a little bit here and there, but I just couldn't quite get into a reading routine. So I returned it to the library, and then I started kind of toying with the idea of trying to buy a Quran. So I was doing some research and naturally hopped onto Amazon. And, when you're on Amazon, there's like these, if you scroll down the page a bit, there's the like products that are bought alongside this product or things that people buy when they buy this. So I was on one different version of the Quran on Amazon, and one of the books that was recommended was this book called Secrets of Divine Love by A. Helwa. It's kind of like just a poetic kind of analysis of the Islam and the Quran for like more of a Western audience probably, or like an audience that doesn't maybe know that much. And so I saw this on the Amazon page, and I thought, maybe I'll check it out. What's the harm in that? So I looked on my ebook app, Hoopla, where you can download books, rent books from the Regina Public Library on the Hoopla. So I checked on there, and they actually had an ebook version and an audiobook version of Secrets of Divine Love. And at the time, I was really into reading audiobooks and books at the same time, either like together or kind of separately. And at this time, I was also teaching music lessons at this music school in Regina called the School of Rock. And one of the interesting things that this music school does is they have all these like different music students who are learning different types of instruments, and they would basically kind of take a group of students and put them together into a band. And this band, their goal was to learn 4 songs, and then they would perform a concert for like their parents and family members. And I was the director of one of these bands, so I was like the teacher that was getting them prepared for their big show. They have their big show at this cool concert hall in Regina called Dark Hall. But so yeah, I was one particular night I was teaching my rock band, and you can imagine after 2 hours of 11-year-olds blasting their instruments as loud as possible in your ears, I needed something kind of quiet and chill for my drive home. So I was driving home from the School of Rock, and I thought, might as well put on the audiobook for Secrets of Divine Love. And this one particular part that I was listening to that night was she started talking about this thing called hamartia, or probably pronounced hamartia, which is this kind of literary device that the ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle, he talked about it. It's like a device in writing. If you're like writing a story or a play or something, hamartia is this tragic flaw that your main character is supposed to have. This tragic flaw leads to like some great downfall of the main character, and through this downfall we learn some life lessons about human nature or something, or human life. And so this Secrets of Divine Love, suddenly she's talking about hamartia. Shakespeare, also, he was a big fan of the Greek poets. He used hamartia in his writing a lot. All of his main characters kind of usually had some tragic flaws. And so I was talking about hamartia with my ELA B10 class. We were studying Macbeth just a few days before this. And now she's talking about it, and I was getting really fired up about this. And I said, I got to tell my students about this. So the next day I went to school, and I showed them the passage, and we listened to like the audiobook, just where she's talking about this. And then I think I got the students to do like a kind of a journal response about how the themes in Macbeth can connect to like the teachings and values and ethics in Islam. And that's kind of the end of that story. We just kind of left it there. But then fast forward to a bunch of months later, now this new school year, so completely different school year, a student came up to me. This would have been like November, I think, mid-November. And this student said, Mr. Rogers, do you remember that book you told us you were reading about Islam? And I said, yeah, Secrets of Divine Love. What about it? And the student says, well, it's maybe not that great of a book, really. It's just one person's interpretation, and it's maybe not like super accurate. And I said, oh yeah, that's fair. Like that's, good feedback. And then I said, like, what do you suggest? What do you recommend? What can I get, or how do I learn more about, the Quran and being Muslim and Islamic? And so the student just simply said, just read the Quran. Very simple, very obvious. And so I said, yeah, I like this. And then I think later that day, I told this student that I was hoping to like own a copy, but I thought, it would be really nice if somebody would gift it to me. Like, I felt like if a Muslim gifts it to me, then I know the version I have is a good version, and that just seems like the way that I wanted to acquire the Quran. And lo and behold, within a week, this is kind of crazy, within a week I had 2 Qurans in my possession. 2 students had come, the student who told me to read it, and then another student had come and given me 2 different Qurans. And and so I started reading. Let's go now to the during reading strategy here. So now I'm going to kind of talk about how did I read it, what was the process like, how did I get through it, etc. So yeah, like I said, this was around the end of November, probably early December, when I started reading the Quran. And I started a bit slow at first. As you know, the second surah, the one about the cow, is very long. Actually, that's something I learned. One of the many things I learned is that the Quran is kind of like organized by longest surahs to shortest. Not like exactly, but kind of. And didn't know that. But so yeah, the first, that second surah took me a while to read through. I read it, and then I decided that I was really nerding out at this stage, and I said, I want to read it again, but this time I'm going to read it with the Arabic recitations. So I went on to YouTube, put on a YouTube video of somebody reciting it in Arabic, and I followed along with the English translation on the screen, and I also had my English Quran in front of me, reading along. I felt like maybe that made the experience a little more authentic or something, even though I know it's, not fully authentic. But yeah, so it took me quite a while just to get through that second surah. But then I kind of started to build a good, consistent rhythm because we got to the winter break. I had more free time, and I was able to make a bit more time for reading every day. And I actually got into a good routine. I looked forward to reading a bit of the Quran every day, a few surahs, or if it was a kind of, once you get to the end, the surahs are pretty short, so I could get through a few. And yeah, I looked forward to sitting down. I looked forward to the routine of it. Sometimes life is a bit chaotic, and you just need a good positive routine and some self-discipline. And I think that's like a big central theme of the whole Quran as well. So yeah, I enjoyed the experience. It felt fun, like a challenge in some ways. But yeah, it also, as you know, the Quran has so many good reminders to think about in terms of ways to live a good life, purpose of life, etc. I won't get too much into, again, interpreting or talking about that, but yeah, there's a ton of wisdom in the Quran that's great to reflect on. And, I would stop every once in a while and take photos of some of my favorite passages, when something kind of really resonated with me. So I'd take a photo on my phone, and then I would go through and highlight the particular passage that was resonating with me on my phone. I wouldn't highlight the Quran. I don't think that would be a good thing to do, but I would highlight it on my phone, and then I had that as a little reminder. I'll throw up a couple different passages that really resonated with me at the time of reading. And yeah, like I said, I would try to kind of make the experience feel sort of authentic in my own lame little ways, and I'd listen along with the Arabic, and I was also kind of learning more about just Islamic history in general. As I read through it, I watched this really long, boring, kind of university-esque lecture series about the golden age of Islam around this time. And so, yeah, I kind of got into it, and Shortly after the winter break, after we came back, this would have been like the first couple weeks of January, I succeeded. I finished reading it, and that leads me to after. What am I thinking since reading the Quran? So yeah, like I said, I looked forward to reading it. I looked forward to the experience. I enjoyed it. I liked the ritual. I liked the wisdom, the history. Just in history class the other day, I was talking to my students about primary and secondary sources for understanding history. And the Quran is like the clearest example of a primary text. So yeah, it felt really cool to read and experience such an important thing. I'm like genuinely happy that I did it. I feel good about it. I'm proud of it. I'm not gonna be walking around acting like I'm an expert about it or anything, and I don't think that I'm, a better person than other people who haven't read it. But yeah, I mean, I think the experience itself was like super good for me, and I learned a lot, and I enjoyed it. And I know that this video won't answer every question you have about my thoughts on the Quran, but I thought I would just leave you with just a little bit of advice that I think I gained while reading it, that I think we can all kind of hopefully maybe take on as we kind of leave this video today. So the advice I want to leave you with is I think we should all be open to learning about the world in general, learning more about it. Sometimes that means reading important books, traveling, being curious, learning about different cultures, being open-minded, empathetic. This is all very cliche stuff, but I think it genuinely helps the world if we're willing to do these things. Like, how could it not? And yeah, I learned a ton of new stuff reading the Quran about history, about spirituality, about, I won't get too much into my own life, but I wasn't raised with religion at all, really. I had never read a religious text before this. The Quran is the first religious text I've ever read, and I was actually surprised that so many of the stories of the Quran are stories that I have kind of heard. Just living in the Western world, you hear some of like the Christian Bible stories or like the Jewish Torah stories. And so that was something that I learned, that there's all this overlap with these Abrahamic religions. But yeah, it's like important to learn about people who you think might be different from you, or worldviews that you think are maybe different than yours, because probably they're close to the same, especially here in North America. Like, I was kind of raised believing that, there are ideas out there that are totally not in connection with the ideas of the Western world. But I think as you learn more about some of these different worldviews or religions, like, you learn that most kind of ethics are somewhat similar, or there is overlap and there is connection. And yeah, I think that's something really good that I've been reminded of because I read the Quran. So, yeah, that's about all I have for you. Hope you enjoyed, or at the very least, hope this helped you get a good night's sleep. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.